Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to avoid this problem, foam showing between the pieces of the center of your ball. I've got a couple different things that you can try. All right, so fix number one is actually the cheat. I call it the cheat because you're not actually fixing any of the reasons why this may have occurred in the first place. However, it will hide the foam. So what we're going to do is just take a small square of the same fabric that we'll be using on the first 4 triangles of this ornament. We want probably in the neighborhood of 2-inch square. You don't have to be exact about this, but we want to put this down on the center of the foam ball, and that way when we go to put our 4 triangles on top of it, any foam that may have been showing in between those triangles won't show because it'll be covered by this foam ball. Here's something you need to keep in mind though. We do want to remember where the center is on this foam ball, especially if you've got lines drawn or you're using the pull markings on your ball. So before you put this square in place, fold it in half once and then in half again, and lightly finger press the center where all of the folded edges are meeting. That's going to be the center of your square, and you're just going to take a pin and put that right through the center, right on that crease little fold mark that you made, like that. And we're just going to pop this right down on top of that pole. And now I'm going to go ahead and pin down my 4 corners. This way I know where to begin the triangles that I'm going to be placing for layer 1. Otherwise I won't know where to start. So I'm just going to go ahead and start like I'm doing the regular pattern, which by the way you can find on this YouTube channel. We've got the entire pattern available. I'll show you how to make this ornament start to finish. So I'm creating my triangle right on top as if that piece of fabric was not there. And I'm going to make sure this isn't perfect so that you can see what it would look like if foam was going to be showing through. I forgot to pin down these corners. All right, so there's the first 4 pieces on this pattern, and you can see where there would have been a little bit of foam showing. Now you can't see it. Now there's no white foam. You can just see the fabric from underneath. Here's the thing. If you do it like this, you're not actually solving the issue that caused that foam to be showing to begin with. And so I actually do not recommend doing this method. This is purely a cheat. So if it works for you, that's fine, but it does use an extra piece of fabric. I am all about saving fabric whenever possible. And the issue that isn't solved, the lines not being straight, is actually going to come back to haunt you as you go further into the pattern. Having foam showing through is actually a sign that your triangles aren't straight, your lines aren't straight, and that's going to mean symmetry issues as you work your way through the pattern. So let me show you another way to fix this issue. Okay, fix number 2 is to make sure that each of your triangle points are meeting all the way in the center of the ball, and I will show you how to do this. So let me start by just putting my first triangle into place. Again, I show all of these details, folding techniques and everything like this in the full tutorial for this pattern, but I just want to get to the point where I can show you how to get those centers really straight. So I'm going to go ahead and create my triangle. Notice that I stuck the pin right into the center of the ball. And if you don't have a lined ball like this, you can use a ball with just the pole markings. You can use that as your center point, or you can start anywhere, of course. In the tutorial, in the other tutorial that I've got, I show you how to do this on a regular plain ball. But here's my first triangle. Now when I go to do my second triangle, let me just go ahead and get my piece prepped. See how I've got my pin up very close to the top folded edge of this piece of fabric? What I want to do here is when I stick this pin into the foam, I want that pin to be literally touching the point of my first triangle. And here's a close-up of that. I've got that pin touching the point of my first triangle. When I go to push this down, it's actually going to cause this piece of fabric to overlap the tip of that first triangle just a tiny bit. That's totally okay, because when we go to create the triangle by folding down the 2 sides, it leaves us with 2 points that are touching each other with no gap of foam showing in between. So now when I go to put on the opposite two pieces, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna make sure that the pin touches those 2 points together. So here's my pin. I'm gonna stick this way up in there, like touching those 2 points. When I lay that flat on the ball, when I push it all the way down, that's going to mean that the top of this fabric is overlapping the pieces of fabric from below. Again, that's totally fine. Creating my triangle. And this way, when I've created the triangle, there's no gaps of foam showing at either side. There's no point on that pin. That's gonna make it hard to stick into the foam. And then finally, I'm gonna do the same thing over here to finish that final section. And there you go. No gaps at all are showing from underneath. All right, fix number 3. Let's say that you are good to go in the center. You've got all those points touching each other, and yet you still have slivers of foam showing in between the triangles. So one other thing that you can check here is you can actually check your overlap here of your left and right halves of the triangle. Because what may have happened, if you didn't keep things really straight, you may have folded them a little bit too far in. So instead of folding straight down, you folded, and this is like kind of a little bit of an exaggerated view of this, but let's say that you folded them in a little bit too far. You can see how that leaves me with a little bit of foam showing right here on the side, and that's a small amount, but that can happen. So one of the things that I like to stress is that when you fold down your left and right sides like this, that you just barely overlap the right side or the left side with the right side. Just basically enough that one pin will hold down both sides. I do that to save pins because it makes a big difference. By the time you get to the end of one of these ornaments, it can save you a whole lot of pins if you do this. But you do have to make sure that you're not doing too much overlap like that, because then that could cause those gaps in between of the triangles. So keep that really straight. And this is when using lines on your ball can really help, because you can use that line underneath to follow with your center line that you've created on your triangle to make sure that it's forming one really nice straight line going all the way down. And then you can use just that one pin that will hold both sides in place. Now, if you do that fix, let's say that you straighten the line out down the center of one of your triangles, and it helps a little bit, but you've still got a little bit of a gap, you may have to actually also kind of adjust the triangle that's beside. So you might have to adjust a couple of triangles to get rid of a gap, but just make sure that both of them have that straight center line and not a whole lot of overlap. All right, so that was fix number 3. There is one more thing I want to show you that could possibly be causing those gaps to be showing in between of your triangles, and that is your top fold of each piece. So even if you've got your pins all up in the center, even if you kept your lines really straight, what can cause a problem is pinning too low below that top folded edge. I like to keep my pin a hair below the top folded edge, but if you come too low, I'll show you what this is going to cause. So like I said, normally I like to pin just a little, like a hair below that top folded edge, more like this. That's where I usually like to put this pin. But if you put it too low, like that, watch what happens when you pin it to the ball. So I'm pinning this into the center, right there where all the lines are converging, or on your pole marking, or wherever that is your center of your ball. And when I go to fold this down, first of all, you can see that it's way coming over the center on the other side, so that's kind of not good in itself. But when I go to fold this down, my line goes off, it doesn't stay straight down the center, and look at how that top point just kind of buckles when you fold it. It's also not straight anymore. Like, here's my point over here, but my line is right there. It just becomes kind of a mess. So instead, what you want to do, put that pin up there really close to the top edge of your fabric, not all the way at the edge, because then the pin's going to show when you fold down the left and right sides, and you don't want that either. But you just want it a hair below that top folded edge. And then when you pin, or when you fold, you get a nice sharp point, and that sharp point stays right in the middle of the ball where it's supposed to be. It doesn't buckle. You don't get like a point going wonky off to the side, because what's going to happen is then you go to do your next point across from it, and it's going to be really hard for you to keep things straight, and that's going to lead to possibly having that foam showing from underneath. All right, so that is the fourth thing to check. Make sure that your pins are in the right spot, just a hair below the top folded edge. Now, why is all of this so important to begin with? It's because if you keep your lines nice and straight as you're working your way through the layers, then when you go to do the opposite side, it'll be so much easier to match the two sides with each other. Your lines will flow into each other really nicely. And this is probably not the best example because it's a busy fabric, but if you look really closely, you can see how my lines from each half flow right into each other. And that just makes the whole finished ornament look really nice. But if your lines aren't straight in that first layer, then as each layer gets added, you're gonna go a little further off with each layer. And then when the two sides meet, they're not going to match as nicely. So hopefully these tips will help you be able to really nail down getting that first layer of fabric laid on your ball really nicely so that you don't have those foam gaps showing through, and hopefully without having to cover the ball underneath with a scrap piece of fabric. I think if you just put a little bit of extra focus into getting that first layer nice and straight, and it just takes a little bit of practice and then it becomes second nature, you're gonna be a lot happier with your finished ornament in the end. So I really hope that that was helpful to you. Don't forget that this was just a quick tip. If you actually want to learn the entire pattern step by step, we've got videos teaching that on this YouTube channel. So I'll put some links right below, including the link for the Basic Star Workshop. That will take you step by step through making this ornament, and it includes embellishing and everything. It's really awesome. All right, thanks so much for watching, and happy ornamenting.